Hi folks, Frank Connors again. Today's essay is called Those Sunday Rides. When I was a kid, Sunday meant going for rides. I always thought scouting around Maine in the family vehicle was more interesting and more exciting than going to church. I remember rides in search of apples or driving to pick up fish or vegetables or the latest piece of furniture or a random part from my stepfather's little business. There were trips to leave sisters at camp or brothers on camping trips. There were many rides to see shows, to visit friends or family or museums or other places. There were many times we'd read about something in the Sunday paper and then pile into the car to go find it. I even remember getting into the car not knowing or caring where we were going, but enjoying every mile of the ride. There were 5 of us kids when my mother married for the second time, and it wasn't long after that there were 2 more sisters. So, pile into the car can be said in a very literal sense. There was always a bunch of jockeying and politicking going on to get beside a window or not get the back seat that faced backwards. Remember those old station wagons? Or to not sit by the brother or sister who was out of favor that particular minute or day. There was always the subconscious plan to stay away from the brother or sister who tended to sometimes get car sick, or the sister who tended to be too bossy. In the earliest days of my mother's second marriage, our new father had only a pickup truck for transportation. That was quickly remedied by the purchase of a car, but in the meantime, we did our Sunday rides in the truck. Try to picture me and my siblings, all 5 of us, shoulder to shoulder and hanging on to the oak headboard of that old Ford truck. Now that was a way to see Maine. In the off-season, we would snuggle down close to the cab and imagine all the heat that never leaked through. We would usually stand in the coldest of weather just to alert the rest of us if there was some good stuff coming up. The cars, when they came, were a great parade of big old wagons. I remember a couple of Woodies, even if the panel was only painted. These cars were steel on steel behemoths, even by today's SUV standards. There were no seatbelts. There were no airbags. We sat 4 or 5 in the seat. We never even considered that we were insecure and never seemed to experience anything more dangerous than a flat tire. Most of these trips led to food. There were picnics at the shore, near a mountain, beside a lake. Always at the side of the road. Maine used to maintain more roadside picnic areas back then, and it used to be easier to find businesses with public restrooms that we could use. My mother used to pack these incredible lunch baskets. Bread by the loaf, cold cuts from Blake's store by the pound, and a bottomless jar of peanut butter cookies, and several jars of homemade jam. There was always some fruit in that great glass jar of cookies, or 2. And you better believe we knew more than half of the ice cream vendors in Maine on a first-name basis. If we stopped at a restaurant, and some Sundays we did, it was probably a small diner, not a fast food franchise. Open turkey sandwiches, hamburgers or the likes, and sure, I remember retrieving many large trays of hot dogs from Mike's Place over in Brunswick. It never occurred to me back then, but what we must have looked like, 9 of us walking into a restaurant, always getting a warm greeting from waitresses. I don't ever remember a bad incident. There were games that counted cows and sheep, and arguments over reports of certain out-of-state license plates. There were moments in anticipation of billboards. Once in a while, when one of my brothers or sisters was unruly, never me, my mother would call for a 2-mile or a 5-mile timeout. No one speaks for 5 miles, she'd dictate flatly, and none of us would. Not even a whisper. Not ever. Lots of those Sunday rides would follow set routes. We would get excited about seeing that huge pasture filled with cows, or be watching in the springtime for young ponies, gangly calves, or fluttery lambs. We would know the places to pull off and watch trains, or in Bath, Kittery, or South Portland, we'd have special places to peek at the ships. Bridges were always special, and sometimes we'd do them twice. Lots of those rides would be aimless. My stepfather had a knack for seeing a fork in the road and driving down the side he'd never seen. He used to say that we were lucky to live in a place where you turn right to see the ocean and left to get to a mountain. More than once, we'd end up turning around in the field, chuckling about being lost. He'd never admit to being lost. He'd just say, in a few minutes, in a few miles, he'd have a better idea of where he was. And we did always get home in time to do homework or to watch the Ed Sullivan Show. I know those trips planted the seed that grew for me into my love of Maine. Those endless, aimless rides bonded my family in many unique and wonderful ways. We're still tighter than the average family, and I know a piece of that bond was the rides. The stories I tell my own children and to the kids of my brothers and sisters have become part of the family fabric. Years later, I find myself driving into some small town, maybe east of Kittery and west of Lubeck, wondering first where I am and then catching myself spotting a McDonald's on a corner and thinking that was the spot where, and I fill in the blanks. I catch myself smiling. Suddenly I know where I am, even if Jane still thinks I'm lost. So here's my point. Gas might cost 8 times what it did in 1950. Lots of the little brown roadside rest areas are gone. There may be a Walmart in the field where we used to picnic, and God knows there are lots more cars on the road, and the billboard's gone. That's a good thing. Per capita, there are many more no trespassing signs than there ever used to be. But if you take your kids or your grandkids, you pile them into your car next Sunday, pack a box of peanut butter or bologna sandwich, chips, cookies, put it all in the trunk and just drive till you're hungry, it will be a day to cherish. I guarantee it. And Maine just waits. Thank you for listening.